Yes, right. Although
We burn enough calories too.
good point. Yeah. Well, this was a gift from some colleagues who came to visit many years ago. I can't remember what university it was, but it was such a international, yeah. And so they, I'm sure this doesn't say anything. Of course, I'm any references, so I want to say well, it's certainly lasted for many years. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's really very good because I usually get my office. My office is very quick and really right grades. So it's nice to see instant. Wait for the air
Question.
Here?
How wonderful. So we're actually broadcasting live.
Big stone, you know, very emotional, very in his experience was super I mean, junior high, I was we sold
Lisa.
Alyssa, what do we just, am I going to start? Yes. Tell me what's. And let's just do the So, but I think it's environment.
Beautiful. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. I'm Reverend Dina McFeeters, honored to serve as your associate minister. At First Church, we welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all that you're carrying with you today and all that your heart longs to set down. We would like to welcome all the people watching online. We are streaming this service live. Nice to know you're all out there somewhere. We're so glad you're with us. We'd like to welcome any guests that may be visiting us today. And if you are a guest visiting us today, we'd invite you to fill out a welcome card you can find in the pew rack in front of you. And just place it in the offering plate later in the service or bring it to the guest table during social hour. And everyone's invited to social hour immediately following the service across the hall in the Leanhouse Common Room, where there will be beverages and conversation. Folks can find hearing assist devices and large print hymnals and orders of service at the back of the sanctuary where you came in. And there are worship activity bags for children and those young at heart. We have a fragrance-free section in the front right pews if you would enjoy that. And if you are watching online, YouTube has closed captioning, which you can enable on the device that you're using. Please let us know if you're having any problems with the closed captioning. Just a couple of announcements this morning. Join your membership team for Sun, Lake, and Connection at the August Beer Garden Sunday this afternoon at South Shore Park in Bayview. Beer optional, of course, and you can see details in the announcements in your order of service. Do you like to sing? Yes. Lucky for you. Oh, okay, you don't have to if you said no. But for those of you who said yes, we have something called the Chancel Choir. And if you're interested in singing with our friendly and marvelous choir, please contact choral director Tristan Strelitzer to sign up. And rehearsals begin on Thursdays, August 24th. They run from 7:15 to 9 p.m. Finally, I welcome you to our worship service by inviting us to say our unison affirmation of our mission, printed in your order of service. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. The opening words are called "To Begin With, the Sweet Grass" by Mary Oliver. Will the hungry ox stand in the field and not eat of the sweet grass? Will the owl bite off its own wings? Will the lark forget to lift its body in the air or forget to sing? Will the rivers run upstream? Behold, I say, behold the reliability and the finery and the tracings of this gritty earth gift. Eat bread and understand comfort. Drink water and understand delight. Visit the garden where the scarlet trumpets are opening their bodies for the hummingbirds who are drinking the sweetness, who are thrillingly gluttonous. For one thing leads to another. Soon you will notice how stones shine underfoot. Eventually, tides will be the only calendar you believe in. And someone's face, whom you love, will be as a star both ultimate and intimate. And you will be both heart-shaken and respectful. And you will hear the air itself like a beloved whisper. Oh, let me, for a while longer, enter the two beautiful bodies of your lungs. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn 1068 in the teal hymnal, Rising Green. Children and RE volunteers are invited to the common room during the second verse as we sing you on your way. And Alyssa will tell us how we're going to sing.
Hey friends, so since this is newer, instead of the short little intro, Kari and I are going to play through the whole form, so you've all had a chance to make melody once, and then we'll join in and sing, and it'll be great. Here we go.
As we enter into a time of centering, spoken meditation, followed by shared silence, followed by the seated singing of Spirit of Life, number 123, in your gray hymnal, I just invite us to settle ourselves where we are. You might want to adjust your position for comfort. Find your sits bones on the chair or the pew. If it works, to lift your spine, open your body, bring your breath deep down into your lungs and soften your gaze. Whatever works to bring you here and now. The spoken meditation is called Lost by David Wagoner. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen. It answers, I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again, saying, here. No two trees are the same to Raven. No two branches are the same to Wren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, then you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you.
Morning, everybody. My name is Dave Umhafer, and I'm privileged to be serving as your worship associate today. About 10 years ago, my wife Gretchen and I bought a rundown cottage near an obscure little lake in Walworth County. Simple living, electricity, but no running water. Our falling down shack was hidden away at the end of a long, unmarked dirt path, so badly rutted that it could only aspire to the rank of road. We could only drive at a snail's pace down this road, often needing 20 minutes to complete the journey. For us, that stretch was like a sliding door to sanity. We left our troubles behind to join up with our little commune of 10 cottage owners, sharing kayaks, boats, canoes, and gossip on our little no-wake lake. At the time, Gretchen and I were eating and breathing stress in desk-bound jobs managing organizations. Let's just say leisure time was not something we excelled at. But we were starting to get into birding, and the lake locale was perfect for that. One morning, at the lake around dawn, we were sipping coffee on a neighbor's pier. 7 great blues appeared overhead. "Gretchen, over there," I said, "herons." She swung her big kahuna Canon zoom lens and captured 2 of them. Soon they reappeared, heading towards the marshy area of our lake. We hurried to our kayaks, launch, glide, skim over lily pads, curse, get into the open water. As we approached a pedestrian bridge that splits the lake, Gretchen stabbed a finger in the air. Then she held out 4. It was the remaining herons. They were perched in a half-dead tree, hanging above the misty water. They showed off their massive wingspans, swooping quietly between treetops. They carved up the mild breeze, looking every bit the part of flying dinosaurs. Then came a clattering. A belted kingfisher raced by twice, a blur of blue. Cedar waxwings preened in their majesty on branches near the shore. 2 of our favorite birds. "Gretchen and Dave, your table is ready. Enjoy the show." And we did. This went on for some time. I eventually broke off in my kayak, thinking this was about all we could expect from Mother Nature in one morning. But the herons seemed to follow me back, gliding overhead until I lost view of them. I pushed on. Nearing the shore, my mouth fell open at one final sight. One of the herons sat motionless in a couple inches of water at the end of the pier where we had started our morning. "May I escort you to your cottage, Mr. Umhafer?" I felt a child's joy and thrill and easy kinship, as if we were playing hide and seek or tag. That morning in the shack, I was so exhilarated, I scrawled out a short story, parts of which you're hearing now. Gretchen sat nearby, selecting and editing photos from that morning, which is her passion and her serenity touchstone. We worked in happy silence. Since then, we have doubled down on our birding adventures, not only in Wisconsin, but around the country, using it as a great excuse to travel and tune out work. For me, birding regularly gets me into the woods. From mid-March to early June, I'm out almost every day. The woods during this time are the place where I am most likely to feel a sacred or divine presence in nature. Sometimes while tiptoeing on a boardwalk in a marsh on a spring day. For me, knowing that Unitarian Universalists honor the value of these transcendental experiences was one reason I joined. Birding has also expanded my environmental consciousness. We have purchased an electric car, and we wish there were more chargers out there. But still, we are proud that we did, and we changed our consumption habits. Gretchen and I have done a lot of tent camping, unplugged. Like her, I can get enraged at what our polluting ways have done to not only humans but animals in the name of convenience. At bottom, it's not the forest I seek, but the individual trees and their avian wonders. As a proud bird nerd, I am willing to say it out loud. I like birds. their resilience, their variety, their music, their colors, their flight paths, their endurance. They are always there with us. And that kinship really extends to the whole birding community. Such a generous and welcoming bunch of humanoids, willing to mentor rank beginners like us, share knowledge, share discoveries. Many of you may have read last week about the discovery of the roseate spoonbill near Green Bay. The first time it's been spotted here in 180 years. I tend to bird alone, at my own pace, finding my own path. And I like to seek out birders who value silent witness. One of my close friends, Mark Hirschman, is a kindred spirit in his connection to the outdoors. He's a constant biker and a deep listener. Together, Mark and I have climbed the bluffs of the lakefront on a nearly weekly basis for 20 years. We are known as the Wednesday guys at the lakefront. We trade a lot of candid and deep thoughts, and we savor nature in the silence. It's a moving meditation. We try to trod slowly and quietly, but sometimes we forget. In our rushed stomping, we'll scatter the birds and other critters. We reset. We stop and sit. We look and listen, confident that they will return.
Lisa Francis was trying to drive home from her job at a bank in Lahaina when the firestorm caught up to her. It was 5 p.m. on Tuesday, the New York Times reported, and she was trapped in traffic near the ocean. Whipped by bruising winds, the firestorm was raging its way west toward her and others in similar straits. She looked at the long column of abandoned cars ahead of her on Front Street and knew there was only one place to go, toward the water. A stranger rallied her and a small group of similarly stranded people, exhorting them to climb over the knee-high seawall and take refuge on the strip of rocks along the water below. They clambered onto the slippery rocks. The fire roared through the cars and buildings on the street above them, unleashing a choking wall of thick smoke. The oven-like heat pushed them farther down to the water's edge. Facing the ocean, she clung tightly to a large boulder, afraid of being swept away by the crashing waves that were protecting her from an unrelenting shower of burning embers. A big wave would come and relieve us, Miss Francis, 54, a Hawaiian native who has lived in Lahaina for 31 years, said during a phone interview on Friday. A big wave would come and relieve us. So the waves, really, the ocean took care of us. From the ground, reporters continue, the devastation wrought by the fire that leveled Lahaina this week might look familiar in a world where intense, fast-moving blazes have become more common. The blackened tree trunks, the burned-out cars, the piles of debris. But from a helicopter flying overhead, the magnitude of the fire's damage took on a surreal quality. The ashen landscape collided with the turquoise blue of the sea. And the buildings that were still standing jumped out like color photographs superimposed on a black and white map. Officials warn that the confirmed death toll from the Maui fires, 93 as of Saturday night, will rise as responders begin entering the hundreds of charred buildings. But the fires have already taken more lives than a tsunami on the Big Island did in 1960. Is nature friend or foe? Savior or destroyer? The ocean took care of those who entered the waters to escape the wildfire. But when tsunamis hit, the roles are reversed. Sometimes the uphill forests save lives. In her poem, Oliver claimed the reliability and the finery and the teachings of this gritty earth gift. The finery and the teachings, yes. The reliability less so as climate change advances and climate emergency becomes a more accurate name. What is our relationship to nature in this time of climate emergency? Again from the New York Times. Jennifer Pribble was asleep when the power line fell in the forest. She heard the generator kick in, but didn't think much of it. High winds sometimes led to electricity failures. It was normal enough. Wildfires were not even on her radar. Ms. Pribble lives at the Maui Bird Conservation Center, where she helps care for some of the most critically endangered birds in the world. Hawaii's native birds have been decimated by disease fueled by climate change and by introduced predators like rats. The center keeps some 80 birds in enclosures in an effort to prevent their extinction and one day hopefully return them or their descendants to the wild. The center houses about 40 akikiki, a native songbird, and about 40 alala, also known as the Hawaiian crow. Alala are extinct in the wild, and only about 5 akikiki are known to remain. The only other members of these species live at the center's sister facility on the Big Island, said Emily Seninger, a spokeswoman for the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. The birds are divided between both places to ensure against disasters like this one. But until now, they thought volcanic eruptions and hurricanes were the biggest dangers. As Miss Pribble watched the fire in the distance, she felt reassured that it was in the forest, where a bed of thick pine needles seemed to be making it hard for the flames to spread. For a time, they actually reduced in size. But she grew increasingly worried as fire approached grasses closer to a road. If it crossed the grasses on the 46-acre property, would provide ample fuel. Rising temperatures appear to be contributing to reduced rain in Hawaii, climatologists say. And more than a third of Maui County is in moderate or severe drought. A neighbor came over to see what was going on, and while he was there, the fire started climbing the hillside toward them. All of a sudden, the fire jumped the road, and it was on our property, she said. We went out with fire extinguishers and kept it under control the best we could, just so it didn't cross back over the road until the state firefighters could arrive. She didn't think about how the birds she was protecting were among the last of their kind. She said she just acted, doing all she could to keep the facility safe. State firefighters arrived about 40 minutes later, as fast as possible. Luckily, the smoke blew mostly away from the birds, which were moved to the safest enclosures and appeared to have escaped any harm. It may seem strange that I lift up a story about a bird sanctuary when more than 1,000 people are thought missing and 93 people lost their lives in the deadliest wildfire in the US in over a century. Yet it is our human relationship to nature that is the biggest contributor to climate change. And it is our human relationship to nature that has the potential to heal climate emergencies. What caused Ms. Pribble to work at a bird sanctuary? Perhaps an encounter with a wild creature, which led to a career and a calling. In nature journalist Richard Liu's book, Our Wild Calling, he writes, a few years ago at an isolated camp on Alaska's Kodiak Island, I walked up a path through the woods at the edge of a still lake. I was heading to the main lodge to meet my son, who worked there during his college summers. The light was fading. Usually when I walked this path, I was watchful. On this island, massive brown bears followed the shoreline, sometimes wandering into the camp. But on this evening, my eyes were down as I thumbed through the contents of my wallet. When I glanced up, I was startled to see 2 piercing eyes. They shone like stars. A black fox stood 3 feet in front of me. The foxes on Kodiak are among the largest in the world. This one was the size of a coyote. Its gaze was disconcerting, and it wasn't budging. We stared at each other for what seemed like minutes. It was probably only seconds. In those eyes, I felt a distant kinship, or perhaps only the sons of a parallel universe. The fox held perfectly still. I stepped forward. The fox moved aside and continued to watch. I lifted my hand and said, "I'm going to the lodge. Would you like to come with me?" Louvre continues, the British writer, painter, and art critic John Berger, in his famous 1977 essay, Why Look at Animals, describes how a wild creature's gaze unnerves us by forcing us to see ourselves across an abyss through an unfamiliar lens. The fox followed me toward the building, he wrote. Several yards from the door, it veered off and dissolved into the high grass. Today, I recall few significant details about most of the people I met that summer in that Alaskan camp, but the black fox's eyes are still watching. For me, it was a barred owl. I was on a hike by myself, intently doing my spiritually merge with nature thing. Some of you know what I mean. Just short of my favorite tree, I had walked this trail countless times. I saw an owl on a low branch, quite close to me. I stopped and held my breath as we held each other's gaze. Well, I couldn't swivel my neck like she did, but her head turned and turned again, and her eyes came back to look at me again and again. It felt like minutes. It was probably seconds. It was time suspended, Kairos time. We connected across the abyss between species. I held still until she flew away. I was transformed by this encounter beyond my ken, yet I felt in that moment we were kin. Owl, heron, kingfisher, fox, opossum, frog. Since the human effect on the natural world is so overwhelming, encounters with wild creatures feel special. And if we are lucky enough to make eye contact, it can feel transformative, a reminder that we are related. I feel blessed every time a hermit thrush allows me to see it forage and flit along the forest floor. I feel seen by it. Of course, that ring around its eye enhances the sensation. But every time I am lucky enough to be near a wild animal or bird, I receive the experience like a visitation from beyond the overpowering presence of humanity. It restores me, and I try not to take it for granted. It might not happen again. Michael V. McGinnis wrote, "Species loneliness in a wounded landscape moves us to want to restore our relationship with place and others. Humanity yearns to reestablish and restore an ecology of shared identity. But we are up against a lot. Dave said he was confident the birds and the critters would return. But will they? In her Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Sixth Extinction, science writer Elizabeth Kolbert describes the 5 mass extinctions during the past billion years and interviews the scientists monitoring the 6th extinction, which some predict will be the largest since the time of the dinosaurs. Between 1970 and 2014, the global wildlife population shrank by 60%, according to the World Wildlife Fund. Back in 1999, Winona LaDuke wrote in her book, All Our Relations, the last 150 years have seen a great holocaust. There have been more species lost in the past 150 years than since the Ice Age. During the same time, indigenous peoples have been disappearing from the face of the earth. Over 2,000 nations of indigenous peoples have gone extinct in the Western Hemisphere, and one nation disappears from the Amazon rainforest each year. There is a direct relationship between the loss of cultural diversity and the loss of biodiversity, she continues. Wherever indigenous peoples remain, there is also a corresponding enclave of biodiversity. Trickles of rivers still running in the Northwest are home to the salmon still being sung back by the native people. The last few Florida panthers remain in the presence of traditional Seminoles, hidden away in the great cypress swamps of the Everglades. Some of the largest patches of remaining prairie grasses sway on reservation lands. 1/2 of all reservation lands in the United States is still forested, much of it old growth forests. Remnant pristine forest ecosystems from the northern boreal forest to the Everglades largely overlap with native territories. Native American teachings describe the relations all around: animals, fish, trees, and rocks, as our siblings and grandparents. Our relations to each other, our prayers whispered across generations to our relatives, are what bind our cultures together. The protection, teachings, and gifts of our relatives have for generations preserved our families. These relations are honored in ceremony, song, story, and life that keep relations close to buffalo, sturgeon, salmon, turtles, bears, wolves, and panthers. These are our older relatives, the ones who came before and taught us how to live. Their obliteration by dams, guns, and bounties is an immense loss to Native people and their families. Their absence may mean that people sing to a barren river, a caged bear, or buffalo far away. It is the struggle to preserve that which remains and the struggle to recover that characterizes much of Native environmentalism. It is these relationships that industrialism seeks to disrupt. Native communities resist with great determination. As an example, in her book, Trusting Change, Karen Herring writes, "The people of Churin, Mexico, in the past decade have demonstrated the power available in reclaiming their belonging to one another. An indigenous community of 16,000 people, about 200 miles west of Mexico City, Churin has faced threats related to the environment, gun violence, systemic oppression, and dehumanization. In the early 2000s, illegal loggers began clearing the mountain forests surrounding Churin. By 2008, several strong-arm cartels, shored up by corrupt politicians and police, expanded the logging at an alarming and violent rate, earning them the name forest rapists. For 4 years, 200 or more trucks of stolen lumber passed through Churin streets every day, each guarded by bandits armed with AK-47s aimed at the villagers. Extortion, kidnapping, and murders created a zone of fear that quieted resistance, while at least 70% of the trees, In the areas forests were felled and removed. Those who stood up to the loggers and cartels were frequently disappeared. Finally, some of the town's women began gathering surreptitiously to discuss other options. On April 15, 2011, 15 women led an uprising against the cartels, blockading the loggers' pickups as they drove through town. 10 years past the uprising, the LA Times and the BBC reported that Turin remains free of cartels, illegal loggers, and its corrupt leaders. It has recovered many of the old indigenous practices and barred entrance to the community by politicians and state police, and is now governed by a 12-person council that rotates into and out of power. The town has replanted over 3/4 of the surrounding deforested land. They've established one of the largest rainwater collection systems in Latin America and developed a sustainable economy managed by the community. In recent years, the community has experienced almost no violent crime, despite its location in one of the most murder-prone regions of Mexico. Unitarian Universalists cherish the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. It is our challenge in the Anthropocene era, when human impact on nature dominates, for us to respect and protect relationships with the wild flora and fauna beyond our ken, treating them as kin. I believe, as Louvre writes, without contact with other than human kith and kin, the family of humans loses comfort, companionship, and perhaps even the sense of a higher power, however one defines it. Harvard professor E.O. Wilson imagines the logical conclusion of the Anthropocene as a planet on which only people, agriculture, and domesticated animals remain. He asks, will we stop the destruction for future generations, or go on changing the planet to our immediate needs? If the latter, planet Earth will enter a new era of its history, a time for our one species alone. He calls the Anthropocene the age of loneliness. May that not be so. May we nurture connections across that abyss between species, leading to saving relationships on both sides. May climate emergencies bring out the best in us, as Lisa was saved, as she clung to that rock in the ocean, as the birds going extinct were saved by Ms. Pribble. May saving relationships on both sides endure. May climate emergencies bring out the best in us as strangers, help each other over or behind the seawall, as the case may be, saving lives and hope. May that be so.
Every week we have an opportunity to practice our values through sharing our resources. Our pledges are at the core of our spiritual practice of generosity. In addition, the church shares half of all the non-pledge cash in our offering plate with a community organization. In this way, we commit our resources in line with the belief that this congregation is interdependent with the world beyond these walls. Today and throughout the summer, we share the plate with the Wisconsin Unitarian Universalist State Action Network, WUSON. WUSON brings together Wisconsin UU congregations to advocate for justice, equity, and compassion with a particular emphasis on climate justice and voting. May the practice of giving bring us joy. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Thank you so much. The closing words are by Hermann Hesse. Sometimes when a bird cries out, or the wind sweeps through a tree, or a dog howls in a far-off farm, I hold still and listen for a long time. My world turns and goes back to the place where 1,000 forgotten years ago, the bird and the blowing wind were like me and were my brothers. My soul turns into a tree and an animal and a cloud bank. Then, changed and odd, it comes home and asks me questions. What should I reply? Will you please rise in body or spirit for our recessional hymn, Blue Boat Home, in the teal hymnal 1064.